Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. I am your host, Mark Bangs, and today, I had to get up extra early for today's guest because he's all the way down in New Zealand. His name is Adem Manderovic. How you doing, man?
Good,
Welcome.
Mark. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be on your show, mate. Long time in the making.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And thank you for getting up slightly later than normal.
Yeah. Well, you let me come on your show, didn't you? So, I thought I should probably return the favor at some point. So there we go.
Mm.
So, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, just to kick things off?
Yes. So I founder of a disruptor company, which basically is sales and marketing and buyer-centric motion alignment, like go-to-market strategy. That all came about unexpectedly, actually. Well, people just started asking me for help from some of the things I was saying. Over years of doing it previously through different ways of giving that information away for free, mostly. That kind of got accelerated from being on the Johnny Stofko show, Ungoogleable, in January this year.
Yeah.
And then basically from there, it just kind of became like people were just inboxing going, can you tell us more of what that magic is? And that's how it came about.
Awesome. Awesome. So maybe take us back a few years before that. Tell
Mhm.
us a bit about like your career, what maybe some key
Yeah,
takeaways, like
yeah,
what's
man.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
build a picture of what's led you to where you are right now.
yeah. It's funny that you should say that because I was actually thinking there's probably two parts of that that are fundamental to that story.
Mhm.
So obviously, for people that don't know, I obviously trained to play football for most of my life because that was my dad's dream. I got heavily injured, like breaking all the bones in my body. So the years that I couldn't actually walk, I just started reading and researching. But prior to that, I was an area manager for high end suiting, and we used a lot of like boiler room manipulation tactics. Like, hi, would you like to try a nice shirt? Would you like a nice trouser with that? How about the height? And I would train all of my staff to say stuff like that was ridiculous, which upsell, 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 upsell. And but for the years after the accident, so I broke every bone in my body, as I said, I had to really think about what could I do not being able to walk. So I got into thinking about how I could get into office works where I could basically just sit at like a dialer and be inbound and outbound in terms of upsell in the phones. But what I
Mhm.
learned from that was basically everything was maths. So handle time, wrap time, note time, process time, everything was mathematics for how many of those could we process to be better at what we did. So soon after that, I basically became the team leader of that. And then from there, I sidestepped into working in a banking system. And from there, I was able to use what I learned from the call center, like boiler room stuff, to write business proposals on how we could be more business efficient. Luckily, that framework didn't get me fired because I'd only worked there for 2 weeks as a customer service agent, and they made me the manager. So from there, I basically sidestepped, upstepped until I worked in the sales department. I did the same thing again on how we could be more business efficient with how we're processing the deals and putting the deals on quicker and what our follow-up processes were and what our outbound calls look like. And we're able to basically exponentially grow what those sales were. So at 27, I was then managing business development managers that were obviously double my age. So that went through a series of acquisitions
How did that go
where
down? That couldn't have gone down too well.
um, you had to find the right key drivers to incentivize people that had always done things a certain way, but also taking into consideration, Mark, that back then billboards and desk phones were still highly prevalent for those roles. So asking them to also do additional things as the tech stacks were growing and as things were basically getting created from the ground up, or how to do things different from they've never done before.
Yeah.
It all came down to what add-on things could I do to incentivize them for better behaviors, to get more efficient and get more deals by doing less output better. And luckily enough, I did well enough there. That gave me a good like a platform to basically get sought after to be head of sales in all of those competitors all over Australia. Through that process, I quickly learned that what are we actually trying to do, Mark? So we are trying to find companies that had this problem to get to the table to sell them XYZ, right? And can we do business? Yes, no. Will they pass credit? Yes, no. We do all of those background checks up front. But essentially what we're doing is trying to show them a tender document up front. Well, during that process. But that might take 18 months in some cases because some of them are quite like large and substantial. So then I started thinking about it when I was at one of the FMOs that I worked at. What if we could shortcut that process? So I'd go to the marketing departments and I'd say, could you help me build this? And they're like, well, we don't have that model. You just need to go back and get all your team to do more phone calls. I'm like, but if we did, what do you think would happen? And they're like, but we don't. So I found very quickly that it was easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So I basically just started creating those tender documents into a death by PowerPoint. From there, I then shortcutted that into a sales copy. Like, what would that need to say for Mark to say yes today, right? So if it would flow and it didn't bore him to death with the 27 pages of bullshit about nothing, right? Or, oh, I'm Adam, I'm blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, like all the double speak that they don't want to hear. So what are the fundamental pieces of what's going to make Mark say yes in an easy to digest format? So then I was like, okay, how could I make that even more palatable? So then I started toying around with shortening that down to like a sales copy, like a copy, like copywriting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started animating those as like cartoons and literally just sending them to companies and going, hey, Mark, I know you don't have time to talk to me right now, but what I'm going to do is send you a short video on how I think I can help you and your team win. Sound good? And basically what happened in my swatch tests of doing that, for every block of 10, 8 people would call me back and book a meeting, go straight to contract. So I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here. Where else could I do that? So that, no shadow of a lie, did cause a lot of friction in a lot of the companies that I worked because 1, I wasn't allowed to create my own marketing content. 2, I was told I was not allowed to make my own demand. And 3, I wasn't allowed to shortcut the process or teach my team to do the same.
Wait, sorry. So you've taken an 18-month process and you've managed to condense this down into essentially just a few touches, really.
Yeah. So I would try to get that in less than 4.
Right.
So, but as you could appreciate from what I've said, to be able to hyper target that, I had to first understand that there was a category requirement for change. Mm-hmm. So I'd have to work that out for those company targets, right? And then I could hyper personalize what's going to make it real for them in that copy of those videos. So in some cases, that would also be like a secondary video of like what's going to make them want to implement the change if they're not ready to make the change. And then, yeah, it basically just flowed from there. But then I realized what I was actually doing was creating the demand, shortcutting the process, getting straight into the buying cycle, and then just closing off from there. Then, as a full cycle team, all we're really doing is facilitating the sale from customer success to communication plan, which would be a preferred modeling because there's less touches, less friction, happier customers. But yeah, that's basically what I learned. And then I just basically leapfrogged around through Australia and New Zealand, doing that, teaching that to as anyone that would listen. And yeah, I had some massive successes with an FMCG company where I did that, where I grew them from very, very small little shop outfit to 8 times revenue in 8 months.
That's nice. So you mentioned
yeah.
No, that's so awesome. And you mentioned resistance, saying like, well, you're not allowed to create your own marketing collateral and whatnot. So could you tell me a bit about that? Because that's common, isn't it? It's like, look, we operate in this way. This is the way we do things. You can't deviate from that. Yeah, I mean, how did that go?
So it's funny you should say that, because that's not, let's put this out on the table. That's not their fault, right? So they're running on a sales-led growth framework that says marketing needs to basically be handcuffed to sale to give them this, and this is this volume that they can assume they can get this out of. But the reason that they're tied to that is because the modeling is wrong.
Yeah.
Like marketing should be looking at, or only really working in demand. So if they're doing that, they're going to strike the buyers in their buying cycle and shortcut the whole process. But because they're tied to metrics that aren't customer centric, that's causing the problem. So companies that are receptive to listening to that change can basically flatten their structures and get triple the outcomes they're looking for. But it's the modeling problem. But that's a
that's a wider issue, isn't it? Yeah, that's a far issue. Maybe putting you on the spot a little bit here, but you're saying marketing should be doing the demand side, and I completely agree with that. Where do you see your approach of doing the video, the animation, and really shortcutting that process? How do you see that working in tandem with, let's say, a demand team or a marketing team that's also doing that on the social community side of things as well?
Let's assume that they're not tied to a sales-led growth framework, and they've got a reasonable amount of rope to facilitate what they could do to the best of their ability, right? Then you're in a position, it all starts with targeting. So if you know who are the most likely targets to have the right conversation, what's going to make it real for them, what channels they want to be communicated with, one, from the new business side, two, getting the demand generation managers help to also customer persona match from your existing databases for the clients that are good for you. You've then got two personas where you can operate and start from there. Then you're basically shortcutting the process of all the marketing and sales friction because you've got a buyer-centric action. So if companies are going to start looking at things like that, they can actually cut down on, they could actually intercept the ultimate customer experience with the ultimate employee experience, because they're only placing calls that they want to be making in the first place. They're not doing the spammy actions that we're getting told over here. You have to make more calls, get your reps to make more calls, or send them 250 cold emails that are going to go nowhere. So it's all tied to a modeling problem. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm imagining, and tell me if you see this differently, but you're running the demand gen piece over here. You're naturally from that going to get people that are raising their hand and say, I want to speak. Even a step back from that, people that are just engaging consistently, you're going to start to spot patterns and trends, right? You're going to see these are the people, these are the personas, or whatever it is. And as you say, you can target on that basis, right? And they're the ones that you're going to be going after with the outreach that you're describing there. So
So then the sales amalgamation of what we would consider business development, account executive, account manager, and customer success is one touch point. So slightly pre and mostly post, and they're working with them to do buyer-led actions. So then basically you're basically just assisting the buyer from creating the right demand through the actions that's going to best assist them to get the best outcomes with working with you as a true partner. So that's the modeling that people need to be looking at.
Oh yeah, and it makes me think of, you see sales job listings, and it always says, we want a hunter mentality. And I get it. You want someone who's driven and hungry and ambitious, motivated, but it's sending the wrong message, because then it's all about closing the deal, going after it, getting deals over the line, versus what you're describing, which is just facilitating that buying process based on demand that's already been generated. So they're in the right place in their buying cycle, the right kind of people, the right kind of business. So I mean, you get it right.
So when you see adverts like that, that tells you that the framework for sales and marketing are completely at each other, because they're still working from sales-led growth, which is basically handcuffing marketing to do performance marketing, which is basically lead capture. Lead capture in that modeling basically means names and phone numbers of no intent. So until they move away from that, then that role of that hunter would basically be slightly pre, mostly post, but a facilitator. That doesn't mean that they can't still have the same killer instincts, but it means they're going to use them to better assist the buying experience. So on-sell, upsell, cross-sell, and what they're looking to get out of the deal. So it's a whole revolution, really.
Oh, for sure. And again, I'm going to put you on the spot again here, but you'll be fine. So imagine you're speaking to a business that's running the old school model, just trying to pump as many MQLs, as many leads through to sales as possible, so that they can harass them just because they downloaded a white paper, an ebook, or whatever. How do we transition from that? So you go into a company that's currently running that model. Is there a transition phase? What are maybe some simple steps, some simple things that teams can do to actually start moving towards that demand gen piece, rather than Chris Walker calls it the MQL hamster wheel?
Well, firstly, what I would be looking to do is actually identify through questions, do you have a problem at this part of the customer journey? Or do you experience it here? Do you have a high customer churn? At 6 weeks, does this happen? At handover, at each of these sections, does this happen? Now, if that's the case, then they're going to be very receptive to whatever changes that you put in front of them, because you can go, okay, so if we implement this change, Mark, no longer do you have these 3 silos that are basically at each other. You've got one person, less handoffs, or go old school and just say, hey, look, tell me a time when you've been excited to be handed off to 3 different people to tell exactly the same story.
Yeah.
So if they can't answer that question without getting into a little bit of laughter, there you go.
No, that's it. I mean, I've worked within sort of smaller end of SME, small medium businesses, where the sales, there isn't really an SDR function. I've worked in a bit of both, but I've almost always been full cycle salesperson. So do you see a difference there? Because in a way, there's, from the customer point of view, there isn't a really jarring handover from, say, like an SDR to an account exec to customer success. A lot of the time, you're still the account manager that's kind of, but then I suppose you're still having to be the go-between between the customer and service teams, support teams, or whatever. So I guess there is still that.
Yeah. So I would address that this way. In those organizations or those frameworks, Mark, was there an agreeable handover plan for communication touch points of when the customer success would be in contact, how they're in contact, where they're in contact, what they like to do, when you're going out on site, what that looks like, can you send them an EDM, all of those things? Because if the answer is no, it's still a clunky handover. It doesn't matter that it's not sectioned out with SDR, BDR, AE, AM, customer success. You're still just moving the stop gate of the problem to customer success. Now, what's a lot of the other side of that is the senior people that used to be in customer success that had the skill set from business development are no longer in the workforce. So what's happening, right, is we've got the same problem at each end of the funnel. So the SDR modeling are basically pushing down the wages as low as possible. So they're basically entry-level people, but the new people in customer success are exactly the same.
Right.
If they don't know what they don't know, they've never seen what good looks like. They've never even seen a communication plan in some of these organizations, right? So it's not going to be second nature to go, hey, Mark, while I've got you on the phone, this is what's going to happen from here. Hey, are there any other sites you reckon we could get access to? Excellent. Who'd be in charge of those? Oh, okay, awesome. Now, would it be okay for me to also visit them on Tuesday afternoon? Back gate? Excellent. Back car park? Excellent. Anything else I need to know? They don't have that questioning skill set in those roles because we've almost like pushed them out, right? So we've got entry-level people here, entry-level people over here, but we're expecting millionaire results. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, that's pretty much what I see.
Yeah, I say it's like cheeseburger, no, hamburger like standards, and we're expecting, filet mignon as the output.
Yeah.
No, that's it. So a bit of a broad question for you. I mean, tell me a little bit more about the way forward. We've spoken about moving from lead gen to demand gen. We're talking about the buyer-centric sort of improving that handover process or doing away with it. What else?
Well, it has to come with accountability for agreeing that there's a problem and wanting to make that change. So then that basically will uncouple all of the problems that we have right now. Because if businesses are receptive to having that conversation, they're going to be okay with the fact of uncoupling how that is. So once that starts happening and they're getting more like better results from the departments that they have and better customer experience and better satisfaction surveys and stuff like that, it'll just spur on from there. But it's actually pretty simplistic because we're basically just saying it starts with the targeting, demand generation manager, and whatever that role of that full cycle sales manager is, they get together. They work out the targeting. Having the proper demand, you're going to meet them in their buying cycle. That is then the handoff point to that slightly pre and mostly post-sales team to facilitate the best customer experience. It's really as simple as that. When do I see that happening? I think that companies that are already winning are doing that right now. If you go and look at someone like Graham Hawkins from Sales Tribe in Melbourne, he's actually revolutionized some of that like argument. You look at what Justin Michael's done in his book, he's saying the same thing, but from the different lens. He's saying the front end action of the SDR could and eventually be replaced with the tech stack. But he is saying that the best action for the customer experience is going to be a full cycle handover. Same as what Nelson Galat's saying in his book, from the opposite direction, from a marketing perspective, calling it marketing-led growth, but we're saying the same thing, man. So yeah, I think there's going to be a revolution of what that is. It seems to be that many people are coming to the same conclusion. The other caveat of that is going to be companies will probably have to start paying more for the base salaries of what that sales marketing team looks like. It won't be the entry-level people, because they'll have to have a much higher skill set, which is similar to what Lars Nissen said in Justin's book. So it's very interesting that a lot of people are saying the same thing, and big companies are having a lot of success with that. So yeah.
I mean, I mean, you mentioned tech-powered sales, Justin's book, and it talks about who was it who you said this, but the
Lars Nissen.
Yeah, probably was. Yeah, the salesperson of the next decade or so, or beyond, is going to have the interpersonal skills, the soft skills. Are going to have to be almost like a data analyst and be able to source and understand with the data and see the patterns and all of that stuff and the technology underlying that. But also, I would say the social piece, right? You need the personal brand, you need the personality, the character, right? So and so where do you see say small, medium-sized businesses that are way behind the curve on this stuff? I'm talking, because you're talking about demand generation managers and things like that. Like, these companies barely have even a basic marketing function, let alone what you're talking about here. So do you see a lot of businesses just kind of falling by the wayside, losing market share over time? Or
so interesting that you brought that up, because when I initially started talking about this in around 2015, even on LinkedIn back then, I was saying that hybrid would be one person. So funnily enough, right? So if you could pitch, even if that was two people, to the smaller SME space, it's still going to get them better outcomes than what they're possibly paying people right now that are causing the problem. So why wouldn't they look at the modeling change? So do more with less, flatter structures, better outcomes. I can't see. I think there will be a spot for someone that can do all of that. So like, why would they not?
As Justin says, that the person will be like the middleware that sits between the different the tech stack or whatever it is. And of course, like, you could, instead of paying 10 people 40 grand, you're paying one or two people, whatever it is, 100 grand and 50 grand, whatever it is. So it makes absolute sense. Nice. I like it. I kind of want to ask you what else, because I feel like there's so much to this, right? Because there's so much opportunity to move beyond that old model. I mean, what other thoughts do you have on this?
There's going to be probably a changeover period for a lot of companies. There's still companies that don't even look at things like channel validation and stuff like that to communicate with where their total addressable market wants to be communicated with. Sure. So they've got a large amount of change. So once they get onto being able to be omnipresent, multi-thread, and do those things better, then they're going to be more receptive to having this full change. There's probably still going to be a little bit of time before that's going to happen, I think.
And just for the uninitiated here, you're talking about channel validation, omni-channel, omni-threading. Can you just sorry, Mark. So what we've obviously figured out doing business development and strategic content creation is you want to be able to have a pretty defined ideal customer profile. So where they like to be communicated with, do they pick up the phone? So like, if I just said to you, Mark, do you always pick up numbers that you don't know? No? So so that basically gives you like, who does pick up the phone in one bucket, who doesn't in another, but from who that doesn't, where do they like to be communicated with? Are they active on socials? What do they like on social? What do they say on socials? What's going to make it real for them?
all of these things are basically validating channels. And being able to be present to have the right conversations wherever they need to be held is a big part of being omnipresent. So multi-thread, but also be able to do combos of where, like, say you've left a voicemail, you sent an email with that title, you've also said, I've sent you a connection request that said XYZ. And yeah, that's basically being multi-thread, omnipresent, having the actions of where they need to be held. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. And this is what really excites me about my stuff as well, because we're definitely on the same page of this, where, you can do channel validation, but you also can figure out, like, scrape keywords and things like this to understand what they're talking about in their job listings, their content on their website, their social posts, all of this stuff. So if you combine that with what you're talking about, you're getting people in the right place at the right time with the right message in the right format that's going to resonate with them, right? So yeah, I mean, and I always say this, but just for perspective, we have to compare this with how most businesses are still doing things. It's unreal. It's night and day. So yeah, I love it. You talk my language.
Yeah, it's good that you brought that up, because we talked about what the basic of that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why we're saying that if marketing and sales work together on that targeting with those validated channels, there's also further enhancements of where we can take that. So we can do all types of different data scrapes that could further enhance what that content creation looks like. We can basically pinpoint where that's going to get them within their buying cycle. So it's very exciting times for those that are willing to look. Yeah,
absolutely. And and to go further into the, instead of hiring 10 people, you're hiring a couple, because of the tech stack. Once you are able to scrape that data, you can then start scaling your outreach programmatically, right? You can start feeding that in. I mean, it's unbelievable what guys like Jordan Crawford are doing, for example. So yeah, I'm really excited to get more into some of that stuff. Maybe we should have a follow-up conversation. Because you're at that point, you're able to automate outreach, or partially automate outreach, but have it still relevant, still somewhat personalized, and it's brilliant, and it's going to look human, feel human. So you're getting the wheels turning.
It's the intersecting of what's going to make it real for them in different types of validated pillars, which are basically going to everything of what I talk about in closed circuit selling, because you've got everything you need to win to basically make sure that this is going to make it real for the end person. So that's where I think it's all going, is there'll be a better unison between sales and marketing for those that want to adopt this modeling, but it's also going to decrease the cost of the cumbersome modeling that's causing the problem in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting because on one side you're going to have businesses where their cost of sale is going down because of what we're talking about. But the other side of those who don't adopt it, their cost of sale is going to do the opposite. It's going to go up because you're going to have to make more calls, more emails, bring in more salespeople to just spam their market even more. So very quickly it's going to. So amazing. All right, thanks, Adam. Good chat. So anything you wanna pitch? You wanna promote? Tell us what you're working on. Where can people find you?
For those that don't know, I give out product reviews, book reviews, and strategy review posts daily on my LinkedIn. So you can contact me there if you'd like to have a look at that. And if that resonates with you, please reach out to myself and we'll have a chat.
Brilliant. Yeah. For anyone listening, do check out Adam's stuff on LinkedIn. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Cool, man. Okay. We'll do this again soon. Good talking to you.
All right. Thanks for your time,
man. Take care. Bye-bye.